Hi all, this is Dr. Waite here. We're looking at week 6 for legal aspects of kinesiology. So this week, you've probably already watched the overview video, but that is available for you to show you the content that we're going to be going over. In this video, I'm going to be just covering our Chapter 8 material, and it's here on the homepage for Blackboard. And we're going to be looking at gender equity and really focusing on basically the Title IX. And there is some reading material for that in the text as well. So I'm going to hop right into it here. Here is chapter 8 on gender equity. So basically this chapter is going to be looking at how the federal government stepped in and introduced what we know as Title IX to provide equal opportunity for men and women in sport, really focusing on allowing women to have more opportunities in athletics. So you're going to look at a history of Title IX, some background things, and then we're also going to tie in Title VII, which, if you recall, looked at, it's Title VII, looked at discrimination. So we covered discrimination law already and looked at that in the earlier weeks, but we'll see how it all ties in. So the big understanding here with Title IX is that the reason it came about is because women were underrepresented in athletics, and really it started. It really wasn't focused on athletics, but athletics became involved with Title IX. So you can see here that looking at the history of athletics from 2011 to 2012, it showed that college athletes, there was almost half as many women as men. Well, not half as many, but you can see here it's just under 200,000 compared to men, almost 260,000. High school athletics, pretty shocking how many more boys were involved in athletics than girls. So the goal was really to start at the college level and provide equal opportunity with the hopes of getting more girls involved in athletics and provide opportunities for them to go to college and play sports and get the same opportunities that men were getting. So since then, there's been substantial growth. In 1971, there was 16,000 women involved in college athletics, and up to 2012, it's up to almost 200,000. So that's huge growth since Title IX has taken in effect. All right, so what is Title IX? So since the original educational amendment of 1972, which is when it started, or was introduced, said no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So it says that Title IX applies if any department in a school receives federal funding. The law applies to the entire school. So that was kind of interesting, but then there were some issues on how it applied to athletics specifically. I'm going to skip forward to the Grove City College versus Bell. So case dealing with the application of Title IX. So one of the biggest setbacks for women since 1972 was that the court found that Title IX was applicable only to the parts of the institution that receive federal funding. So technically, athletics didn't receive, or if a school did not receive federal funding for athletics, which was most schools at the time in the 80s, it was excluded. So all of a sudden, scholarship opportunities dropped off the board, and then Title IX became ineffective for athletics. So women could still get money to go to school, which was equal opportunity as men, but for athletes, it wasn't being regulated. So fast forwarding, 1987, they challenged it again. They said if any part of an institution received federal funding, the entire institution was subject to the specification of Title IX. So it kind of reversed it. And then it shows the different bodies that regulated it and so forth. So here are the three things that Title IX measured, right? So part 1 is financial assistance, part 2 is equality in program areas, and then part 3, effective accommodation. So it's not all just about scholarship opportunity, it's also about growth for the department itself. So for the women's sports, are they being supported by the university? Are they growing? Therefore, are they going to progress and provide more opportunities for women to come in and play for that sport? And then accommodations, are they equal to what the men's programs were getting? There was a 3-part test that was developed, so 3 prongs. Prong 1 is are participation opportunities for both sexes substantially proportionate? And then, is there a safe harbor if participation of underrepresented sex substantially proportionate to the other sex? If no, then stop there and blah, blah. So then prong 2, so basically, is there equal opportunity, right? Prong 2 is, can the institution show a history and continued practice of program expansion? And then prong 3, have the interests and abilities of the underrepresented sex been fully and effectively accommodated? Originally, you only needed 1 prong to be compliant, so you only had to satisfy 1. So any of the 3 met compliance for Title IX. Then the Cohen and Brown versus Brown University occurred. Basically, what happened, the university needed to cut its budget because it was not making enough money to fund all the programs. So they cut men's golf and water polo, and then women's gymnastics and volleyball. And they made it sound like basically it was equal, cutting 2 programs for 2 other programs, but it ended up being kind of lopsided. Usually when you cut a women's volleyball program or gymnastics, those are big teams, especially for women's sports, because they don't have football, whereas football eats up a lot of scholarship because it's such a large team and it's only men. So this case ended with basically reiterating that if teams are cut, then it has to be equal. So whatever scholarships were cut for one program has to be equal to the scholarships cut for the women's, and you can't have it imbalanced. So you can't cut 2 small men's teams and then cut 2 large women's teams, because then you're not providing equal opportunity, and you're also not providing balance in scholarship and funding and so forth and accommodations. So basically, they lost that case. So it says that schools may sponsor teams for members of one sex, but it has to be based off of athletic skill, and then there is no contact sport exception. So because like sports like football tend to dominate in the male category, basically the prong 1 has to be satisfied still. So if you have a school that has a football program, whatever number of scholarships are provided there, you have to find equal number of scholarships in other contact sports for women. It's kind of interesting. So you'll see a lot of universities that don't have men's football. They tend to have a lot more scholarship opportunities in other sports. I actually went to a Christian university here in Fresno that we didn't have a football team. So there was actually a lot more money available for the men in other sports, since they wasn't being eaten up by a football program. Whereas schools that have big football programs, they're gonna, if they take up a lot of the scholarship, then there's gonna be a lot more opportunities for women in other sports, but less for men. We see that in a lot of schools now, and that's kind of like the argument is, on the men's side, it's like, wow, it took away a lot of scholarships. Well, it's because you have one sport that's dominating all the scholarships, so then it's providing more scholarships for women, which is great, but then men who go to a school and don't play football or another big sport like basketball or so forth, other programs suffer. So I know another local college in town, Fresno State, they don't have any scholarship for their men's cross country team, but the women have scholarship, and it's because they just don't have enough equal opportunity to provide for the men, because it goes to football and other programs. And that kind of gets into cutting teams, and I'm not going to go too far into that, but it just kind of talked about how they had to have equal opportunity for teams, kind of like what I was already saying. they had to take into consideration how they cut women's teams. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, let's see any other big ones. There's some different cases for you to read through, and I'm not going to discuss each one, but they all kind of talk about how each of the Title IX went into effect and how it's been regulated. So it's kind of interesting, and you'll see that in the activity for this week as well for your assignment. And then Title VII talks about how does discrimination play into this role. So basically, it's saying that, and you've seen this in previous weeks. So Title VII says that it prohibits discrimination against any employee on the basis of sex, in compensation and other benefits associated with employment. Plaintiff merely has to show that some negative job action, such as like termination, that was taken on the bias of the employee's sex. So basically, falling in line with the Title IX employment for athletics specifically. So in 1972, it said 90% of coaches for women's teams were women, which interestingly now in 2014, only 43% were women. But there's a lot more sports programs. So the argument is it's created more job opportunities for both sexes both genders by allowing more women's sports to come into play. So you're seeing more men coach women's sports because now there's more opportunities for it. So even though these numbers look lopsided, like, oh, the percentage of coaches have gone down, well, technically that's just saying percentage for the number of programs. In reality, there's a lot more opportunities now. And then that kind of got into like the Equal Pay Act as well. It has to be equal pay for the jobs. So in most cases, like I know for our university, men and women's soccer programs, like they're equal pay for the coaches. One coach doesn't get more than the other. The only time you'll see a difference in pay would be with football programs because there are no women's football. So football tends to be the highest paying, brings in a lot of money too at some schools. So anyway, so that's kind of how Title IX came into effect. A lot of background history on it. There's a little bit of stuff about sexual harassment and how Title IX covers that. And then as far as like your facility, when you're thinking through the burdens of Title IX, some risk management implications to think about, and a lot more to dig into in the textbook as well. So make sure you get into the reading. If you have questions, you can always reach out to me. Otherwise, I will see you in the Reflection 2 on our Title IX discussion topic. Looking forward to what you have to say about that. Okay, bye.